Okay, so you know how much we all love those work disagreements.
Yeah, those are always a blast.
Said no one ever.
Right.
But seriously, what if I told you there's a way to actually turn those tense moments into something that could make your workplace better?
Hmm. That's pretty much the opposite of what usually happens, right?
Exactly. And that's why we're doing this deep dive. We're going to dig into Laurel Oss's book, A Clear Mindset.
Okay.
And she throws out this wild stat that we spend the equivalent of 12 days a year just dealing with workplace conflict.
12 days.
12 days. Just imagine if we could get even a fraction of that time back and turn those disagreements into something useful.
Okay, yeah, I'm listening.
So how do we do that?
Well, Loss's big idea is that we need to start by understanding what's happening in our own brains.
Okay, so before we even think about negotiation tactics,
Right.
we need to get what's happening up in our heads when that disagreement erupts.
Exactly. It's like this, you have this really old part of your brain that basically thinks it's still living in the Stone Age.
The Stone Age.
Yeah, basically. It's constantly on the lookout for danger, but it doesn't really know the difference between a saber-toothed tiger and, say, a heated debate about the budget.
Oh man, so true. So even if we know logically that a disagreement at work isn't a real threat, our brain is still basically hitting the panic button.
Yep, exactly. And that's that fight or flight response kicking in.
Okay.
And the thing is, even when we realize there's no real danger, it still takes our bodies a while to stand down from that state of high alert.
So how long are we talking about here? Because it doesn't really seem like it takes that long to realize you're not about to be attacked by a saber-toothed tiger.
You'd think so, right? But research shows that it can take a good 6 to 7 seconds for our bodies to calm down, even after we realize we're safe.
6 to 7 seconds. That doesn't seem like a long time.
I know it doesn't, but just think about it.
Yeah, it's true.
In the middle of a tense meeting, those seconds can feel like an eternity.
That's a really good point because you're not really thinking clearly in those moments, are you?
Not at all. You're more likely to react defensively, maybe say something you regret later.
Ugh, yeah, I've been there.
Lassa calls this low road processing. Your brain is taking the shortcut, but it's not always the most helpful route.
Okay, so knowing that our brain is basically wired for drama, what can we do about it? How do we stop ourselves from going down that low road every time there's a difference of opinion? So we're working with this Stone Age brain that's just primed for a conflict meltdown. But it's not just about that initial freakout moment, is it? There's more to it.
Yeah, you're right. It's not enough to just know we should take a deep breath and try to think things through.
Right, because it never really works that way, does it?
Nope. We've got all these sneaky little biases that can totally sabotage us in the heat of the moment.
Okay, so tell me about these sneaky biases, because I have a feeling I'm very familiar with them.
The first one is called negativity bias. Basically, it's our brain's tendency to focus on all the negative stuff, like what could go wrong or potential threats.
Oh, yeah, the sky is falling mentality.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like that saying, we remember the one negative comment over 100 positive ones.
Oh, tell me about it. Like when you get a great performance review, but there's that one tiny thing you need to work on.
Yeah,
And suddenly that's all you can think about.
exactly. And in a disagreement, that negativity bias goes into overdrive, you know?
Yeah.
You tense up, your heart rate speeds up, maybe you even cross your arms without realizing it.
It's so true.
All those little signs that you're unconsciously putting up walls and seeing the other person as the enemy instead of someone you're trying to work with.
So basically, our body language is a dead giveaway.
Pretty much.
Okay. So negativity bias noted. What's next?
The next one is ego bias. This is that little voice in your head that makes disagreements feel super personal. Like your whole worth as a person depends on whether or not you win this argument.
Oh, man, I know that voice way too well.
Right. It's like, if I don't win this argument, then I'm a total failure.
Exactly.
And Lotza has this great image in her book to illustrate this.
Oh, really?
She says to picture two people having a disagreement, but instead of looking at the problem they're trying to solve, they're just laser focused on each other.
Oh, wow. I can totally picture that. It's like they're in a staring contest.
Yeah.
And the actual issue is just sitting there on the table between them, completely ignored.
Exactly. And when our egos are calling the shots like that, we can't see the other person's perspective or find any common ground because we're so busy defending our own turf.
Okay. Ouch. But so true. Okay, so we've got negativity bias and ego bias, both gunning for us.
Yeah.
What's the third one? What else do we need to watch out for?
This one's called rationality bias, and it might be the sneakiest of them all.
Rationality bias. That sounds like a good thing, though. Doesn't mean being reasonable,
You'd think so.
right?
But it's that sneaky belief that if we just lay out all the facts and use perfect logic, then everyone will have to agree with us.
Okay, and I'm sensing there's a but coming.
But here's the thing. We forget that our own logic, even when it seems rock solid to us, is often based on our own experiences and biases.
Oh, right. So you could have two people both using logic and reason,
Yeah.
but they're starting from totally different places.
Exactly. And that's why understanding these biases is so important, because they can derail a conversation before it even really begins.
Okay, so we've got these three biases: negativity, ego, and rationality all working against us in a disagreement. So what do we do about it? How do we actually put this knowledge into practice?
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got these biases: negativity, ego, rationality, lurking in the shadows, just waiting to trip us up in a disagreement. But here's the good news. It's not all doom and gloom.
Oh.
Once we know about them, we can actually start to do something about them. We can choose not to let them control us.
Exactly. And that's where Laws's clear mindset model comes in. It's not just about understanding the problem, it's actually about having a plan, a roadmap for handling things differently.
Clear mindset model. I like it. Tell me more.
So it's a 5-step process, and it's all about changing how we see conflict. Instead of just trying to avoid it or minimize the damage,
Right.
the clear model shows us how to actually use those disagreements as a chance to make things better.
Okay, so it's like a totally different way of thinking about conflict. Instead of
Mhm.
how do I survive this meeting, it's more like how can we make something good come out of this?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, I'm all in. Walk me through this clear model.
Yeah.
How does it work?
So the first step is called clear your mind. And it's not as simple as it sounds. It's not just about taking a deep breath. It's about really becoming aware of all those thoughts and feelings, anxieties, worries, assumptions,
Right.
all that stuff that might be clouding your judgment. You want to hit the reset button on your brain before you go into a conversation?
Okay, that makes sense. But how do you actually do that? I mean, you can't just snap your fingers and make all those thoughts disappear.
Well, no, it takes a little effort,
Mm-hmm.
but it's worth it. Things that
Mm-hmm.
can help are, deep breathing exercises, maybe a quick walk outside, even just writing down your thoughts in a notebook,
Huh.
anything to create a little mental space.
Okay, so just getting some perspective, basically.
Exactly.
Okay, clear?
Yeah.
Your mind got it. What's next?
All right, step 2 is lead with confidence. And this might seem a little counterintuitive, but Laza talks about how being vulnerable can actually help build trust and connection.
Wait, really? Vulnerability? Especially in a work disagreement.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that kind of risky?
It might seem that way, but think about it. When you're willing to say, hey, this is how I feel about this, even if I might be wrong, it disarms people. It creates a space for them to be open to.
Oh, okay, I get it. So it's
Mhm.
like you're modeling that honesty and openness.
Exactly. And that can totally change the tone of a conversation.
Okay, so vulnerability, interesting. What's step 3?
Step 3 is all about really listening to the other person. And I don't just mean nodding your head and pretending to pay attention. Lots of calls it encourage different views. It's about truly trying to get where they're coming from, their perspective, what they're assuming, what their motivations are, the whole 9 yards.
Okay, easier said than done, though. Especially when you're feeling defensive,
Yeah.
Like you just want to prove your point.
Right. It definitely takes practice. But things that can help are things like paraphrasing what you're hearing, asking clarifying questions, making eye contact, and using your body language to show you're engaged. You're really trying to get inside their head and see the situation from their point of view.
Okay, so not just waiting for my turn to talk. Got it. So what happens once you really feel like you've heard the other person out?
Then you can move on to step 4, which is where the magic starts to happen. This one is called align on a common intention.
Ooh, that sounds promising. Tell me more.
It's about shifting the conversation away from just battling over opinions and focusing on finding common goals. Even if you disagree on the how, you can usually at least agree on the what you know.
Yeah, I see what you mean. So it's
Yep.
like, okay, we might have different ideas about how to get there, but can we at least agree that this is where we want to go?
Exactly. And once you found that common ground, you can move on to step 5, which is recognize opportunities and co-create. That's where you take all those different perspectives and brainstorm solutions that nobody could have come up with on their own.
So it's like everyone's ideas are building blocks, and you're creating something even better than you could have imagined before.
Exactly. And the cool thing is that these 5 steps, they all build on each other.
Yeah, they really do. But it seems like it would take some practice to really get good at this whole clear mindset thing.
You're right. It's a skill. Like anything else, the more you do it, the easier it gets. And the payoff is huge. Not only will you be able to get through disagreements without losing your mind, but you'll actually start to see them as opportunities for growth and innovation.
So it's like flipping the script on those dreaded workplace conflicts. Instead of something to be feared, they become chances to learn and grow.
Exactly. And it all starts with that shift in mindset, seeing conflict not as something to avoid, but as a chance to make things better.
This has been amazing.
Hmm.
Seriously eye-opening stuff. I'm definitely going to be trying out this clear model.
So to wrap things up, what's the one thing you really want our listeners to take away from this deep dive? The next time you're in a disagreement at work, just take a second and ask yourself this. Am I trying to win this argument, or am I trying to understand? The answer to that question will tell you a lot about how you're approaching the situation and how you can turn that conflict into something positive.
That is such a good question. I love that. So to our listeners out there, remember conflict is a part of life, but it doesn't have to control us. By understanding those sneaky biases and using the clear mindset model, we can turn disagreements into opportunities for growth, innovation, and positive change. Until next time, stay curious, everyone.